What's going on, y'all? It's GUMGUMTCG here, back again with a new series. Today I have a series for you called Deep Dive. This is going to be where we take a deep dive looking at a new leader and how they can fit into the meta, what kind of cards you can play in their decks, and try and come up with a couple different strategies for you all to try out. If you're interested in one of these leaders, there's many different ways to build decks now that we have 4 sets of cards and multiple structure decks. So I want to take a good look at all the good options you could play in one of these leaders decks and see where we can go from there. Today we're going to be starting off with Queen. You know I'm planning to play Queen for OP04. I posted a couple videos from my stream. If you haven't checked out my stream, go check me out on Twitch. We stream on Sundays around 7. And I just want to show off a couple different options that I've tried out for Queen and what I think is the best option, as well as what I think some other options could be. So before we get into it, I do want to say big thank you to everybody who has given me support over these past few months. We finally hit 250 subscribers on YouTube and we're trying to grow to 500. So if you're not subscribed, definitely make sure to subscribe, like the video, and comment down below. Let me know what you think of some of these Queen lists and what I could do to make them better, what you're running, and stuff like that. If you want to talk more about it, hop into the Discord. I'll have a link to that below, as well as a link to Dueling Guard. If you haven't heard of Dueling Guard, they're an amazing company that makes TCG anime inspired accessories, so make sure to go check them out. I'll leave a link to their website down in the description below, as well as code GUMGUMTCG you can use for a discount at checkout. What? You haven't heard of Dueling Guard? Dueling Guard is the best TCG accessory company on the market. They have high quality deck boxes, binders, and playmats made for people who enjoy playing and collecting trading card games in style. They have tons of designs based off of fan favorite animes such as One Piece, Bleach, Full Metal Alchemist, and many more. They hit the ground running earlier this year, making high quality TCG accessories with beautiful designs that have sold out many times. So if you haven't picked up any of their products, make sure to do so before they sell out again. I have a few deck boxes and playmats from them already and can attest to how they don't cut any corners when it comes to quality, performance, and design. I highly recommend their products and use them every time I play cards. Be sure to check the description below for a link to their site and use code GUMGUMTCG for a discount at checkout. Alright y'all, let's get right into this. So first we're going to go ahead and take a look at the Queen leader. I think that it's going to be very beneficial to take a look at the leader's effects and see what kind of cards, as well as its typing, as what kind of cards we can fit into this deck to really optimize it and come up with some different strategies. So we're going to look at Queen. It's a dual color blue and yellow leader for life, and it is ranged. Right now the attributes, or whatever they are called, don't really matter. Just like to throw it out there, Queen is a ranged leader, and Queen's effect reads Dawn ×1 when attacking. If your hand and life total is 4 or less, draw 1 card. So if all the cards in your hand as well as all the cards in your life equals 4 or lower, you get to draw a card. But the good part about Queen doesn't really come into play until you have an 8 cost or higher character on the field. It says if you have an 8 cost or higher character, you can place 1 card from the top of your deck on top of your life instead of drawing a card. So if you have that total cards in your hand and life 4 or less, and you have an 8 cost or higher character in play, you get to gain a free life essentially instead of drawing 1 card. And that's really where this deck comes into play and starts being a nuisance for other decks to deal with, because sometimes when you get to the late game with Queen, all they are doing is spamming out these 8 and 9 cost characters every turn, and then also using their Queen effect. So they're either shuffling a body away, or gaining a life, or gaining 2 life, and it can be very scary to deal with. And I'm going to show you some of these cards that I think would be really nice to play in a Queen deck. Maybe a couple options you were thinking about that wouldn't be so nice, and yeah, let's just go ahead and start diving in. Of course, the first option is going to be the 9 cost Draco Mihawk from OP01. This card's phenomenal in this deck. You get to bottom deck a 7 or less cost character, and you also get that body on field to be able to activate the Queen effect. So if you're at that 4 or less hand and life total, you drop this on the field, shuffle something away, put the last on Queen, swing, and gain a life. It's really, really good against certain decks. I found that Mihawk is one of the best cards in the Queen deck against Rebecca, as well as Film Dofi, because they both like to play 7-cost Luffys, and that is one of their strongest cards in both of those decks. Mihawk gets rid of those cards immediately, and that's why we want to play Mihawk. You're going to see Mihawk in most of these lists just because he is such a powerhouse for Queen to run. Our next option is going to be the 3-cost Doflamingo from OP01. I personally like this card in my list because you can play it and stack your deck. Then you have that 4 or less hand and life total, and you can know what card you stacked to the top of your life. You don't really get that advantage in the Big Mom decks or the Katakuri decks because you don't have a card that looks at your life and rearranges things. We have that now in Don Quixote Doflamingo. You could also play Perona, but I like Doflamingo because in Queen you're playing a much more defensive strategy, and it's very beneficial to have blockers on field to help defend your life. So that's one reason I really like this card. You just get to stack something like a Beige or a Sanji or another trigger card, and then you take that life next turn when your opponent hits you, you get advantage off of it, and then you just regain the life again with the next card that you stacked off of this effect. Or you could stack it so that you're drawing a 2K. You don't always have to gain the life. Even if you have the body on field, you could just draw a card. So that's why I really like Doflamingo in these deck lists. Another card that I saw when I was looking through here is going to be the Morley from the Revolutionary Army. This is from OP02. This card hasn't seen like any play at all. It's a 4-cost, 5,000 character, 1,000 counter. When attacking, if you have 1 or less cards in your hand, your opponent cannot activate blocker character with a cost of 5 or less during this battle. I haven't seen this card in any deck list. However, with Queen, you do get down to those really low hands sometimes, and I could see this card being almost a Luffy, if you will, a Red Rush Luffy. It doesn't have Rush, however, Unblockable is a very, very powerful trait in this game, especially when you're going against decks that like to play a lot of blockers. The next card we're going to be taking a look at is Kaya. Kaya is just a great 2,000 counter. It's 1 cost, on play, draw 2 cards and trash 2 cards. So this can be really helpful, especially in the early game when you've got a clunky hand full of 9 cost and 8 cost that you can't really play yet. You don't always want to get rid of them, but sometimes if you're stuck with all of those cards, you might want to try and grab some blockers or some other form of removal or something that you can play in the meantime. That's why I really like Kaya. I think that she's a great card for this deck, and you'll probably see her in most deck lists. Another card we have here is the Soja King, 7 cost, 6,000 power. On play, return a character with a cost of 6 or less to the owner's hand, then draw 2 and trash 2. I mean, it's just Kaya, but you also get a big body and you get to bounce something. I like this card a lot in Queen, especially because you like to go first and get that odd dawn curve, and a lot of the times you're just kind of playing blockers, and then on your 7 dawn turn you can play this, and then next turn you can play something like Mihawk or Yamato, and you can really start to flood the board with some bodies so that you can actually deal some damage, which is one thing that Queen struggles to do, is you try to recover more life than you're dealing to your opponent, which that's a reason I like Soja King. It gets you a body on the field. All you need is 1 Dawn to make it 7k, so your opponent has to counter with at least 2 cards or an event, and yeah, he gets to draw you some cards. I think it's a great option for Queen. Here's a card that I think could be played in Queen. However, I don't think it's a great option because on the turn that you play it, you cannot use Queen effect. You can afterwards, and this body's going to stick most of the time unless you're playing against another blue deck. However, this 10-drop Kaido really isn't super beneficial to the Queen strategy. It is going to get some bodies off field and get you a big body to help deal some damage. However, if you're dropping this and you're already at like 1 life and your opponent has multiple bodies on the field and you're only able to clear 2 of them, next turn you might be looking at the end of the game. And I think it's something interesting that I could see toyed around with. However, for now, I really don't think that this card deserves a spot in the Queen list, at least not in my list. I think that you could just play Mihawk for now and then also pull off that Queen effect to draw a card or gain a life instead. Another good card we have is the new King, 7 cost, 8,000 counter, on play, draw a card. It's very simple, and I think it could just be one of those cards that's kind of like a replacement for Soja King. If you don't want to run Soja King or you don't have them, you can pick up some Kings and play that instead. Gets you a little bit of card advantage, and it is a bigger body than Soja King, and it's also searchable with a card we're going to talk about here in just a minute. So I think that this is a solid option for this deck. It doesn't get you to that point where you can use Queen effect to gain a life. However, drawing an extra card and getting a big beater on the field can be really helpful at times too. Now here's a card that I think is really interesting, and we're going to see in one of these deck lists, is the Queen 4-cost 5,000 power character. This card reads, on play, if your leader has the Animal Kingdom Pirates type, which it does, look up to 7 cards from the top of your deck and reveal 2 total Playgrounds or Ice Oni and add them to your hand. Then place the rest at the bottom of your deck at any order. So this card is going to be a searcher for 2 cards, Ice Oni, which we're going to talk about next, and Playgrounds, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But I think that this card really makes a different version of this deck possible. It makes the version of the deck that they want you to play. You know, Bandai really wants you to play this version. It's what goes with the Queen leader, and I think that it's super interesting. Ice Oni and Playgrounds really allows for some very strange forms of removal, and I think that it's really cool to see this searcher and also a body. I really think that this is a solid option for a different list of Queen. However, in the version I like to play, I don't play this. I think this could be more of a fun strategy and something to kind of gimmick your opponents with. So let's go ahead and talk about Ice Oni real quick. Ice Oni is one of the cards you can add off of this Queen, and it's an 8-cost character, so it does let you hit that Queen effect. And it has 0 power, but it does have 1,000 counter. So even if it's bricked in your hand, you can toss it away. It says, your turn, at the end of battle between this character and an opponent's 5-cost or lower character, you place the opponent's character at the bottom of the owner's deck. So this card is kind of like 3,000 Worlds in a character form. However, it doesn't have any attack. So it's very vulnerable after you use it that first time. But the way that Playgrounds and Ice Oni work, I don't think that it matters if it gets KO'd. As long as it fulfilled its purpose to get something off the field, I think that it's perfectly fine for that. And it also lets you hit your Queen effect. So I do think that this is a sweet card. And when paired with this Queen, as well as the Playgrounds card, as well as Who's Who, which we're about to talk about, I think this is a really fun and goofy strategy to try out for Queen. Next, we got the Sasaki 2K counter. 3 cost, 4,000 power. On play, it mulligans your hand. So if your hand's really bad, you can play this and just get a new hand, but oftentimes it's kept in hand as a 2K counter. I've only rarely played it to shuffle my hand away, but you do get some bad hands in Queen at times. That's one reason that I like to run this card as a 2K counter, just so that I can possibly shuffle those bad cards back at the beginning of the game, and then hopefully start with something fresh that's going to lead me to victory. Next, we got the Who's Who 1-cost 2K card. It's a searcher for the Animal Kingdom Pirates type. It's on play, look at the top 5 cards of your deck and reveal up to 1 Animal Kingdom Pirates type card other than Who's Who. Add it to your hand and place the remaining at the bottom of the deck. So when you play these blue cards in Queen, you play Who's Who so that you can search your 2K, you can search your Ice Oni, and you can search your Queen, as well as King and Kaido. There's a couple other cards you can search too, like Playgrounds and a couple others we're going to talk about here in a minute. But I think if you are going to play a version that heavily revolves around these blue cards, you're definitely going to play Who's Who. And it's great to be able to cycle through your deck and to know what you're putting at the bottom, and to also generate some extra advantage while getting a small body on the field. Next, we got Draco Mihawk. I just threw this in here as another option for 2K counter. It's a body that does Kaya and Soja King. You know, it draws 2 and trashes 2 when you attack with it, so you can constantly cycle through your deck with this card if it sticks, but I just wanted to throw it in here as another 2K option for the blue strategy. Then we have Trafalgar Law from the 7 Warlord structure deck. This is just a 1-cost 1,000 power blocker. I think that it's a great option. You know, you can go Mihawk, Law, if you're not planning on using your Queen effect, or something that I like to do is I like to go Katakuri, then Queen effect, then play a Law, so you get some extra insulation. So I think that it's a solid option as a 1-drop blocker for you to test out in this build. Next, we have another blocker from the 7 Warlord structure deck. That's going to be the Boa Hancock trigger blocker. 3 cost, 1,000 counter, 1,000 power, and it has a trigger to play this card. I personally really like these trigger blockers. In my personal list, I play 3 different ones at 4 copies apiece, so it can be very hard for your opponent to kill you, even if you only have 1 or 2 life left. If they're both these trigger blockers, you just get to pop them out on the field, and then they have another body to deal with. I think that this is a solid option for this deck, and if you're considering playing Queen, you definitely want to try out at least this or the Charlotte Brûlée in your list. Next up, we're going to be looking at some of the yellow cards, specifically some of the Big Mom Pirate cards. And one of them is the Sanji. It's not Big Mom Pirates, however, it is searchable off of Pudding, which we're going to get into in just a minute. 2 cost, 3,000 power, 2,000 counter. That's why we really like this card, 2,000 counter. However, it also gets you free advantage. It says Dawn 2 when attacking. You can add this card to the top or bottom of your life to your hand, and you add a card from the top of your deck to your life. So you essentially get 2 draws a turn with this, and you just get to generate a lot more advantage, hopefully drawing in more 2Ks and more helpful cards, blockers, things like that to help you close out that game. Next, we got the 4 cost Charlotte Cracker. This card is really good in Queen because a lot of the times you're going to be at low life, so you can take advantage of this card's double attack. When it has a Dawn under it, it gains double attack and 1,000 power, so it just becomes 7k with 1 Dawn and double attack. Crazy card and super powerful in any yellow deck, honestly. Another option I like is the Charlotte Smoothie. This card lets you add a card from the top or bottom of your life to your hand and gains 2,000 power when it attacks. So you can help yourself get lower in life and closer to that Queen effect. So I really do like this card, and I've seen it in countless yellow lists, and I do think it is a solid option to try out in this deck as well, especially if you're playing Charlotte Pudding. This is going to be just like your Who's Who card, except it looks for Big Mom Pirates card, and it only gets to look at the top 4. So that's why we're talking about these Big Mom Pirate cards. You know, we definitely play Katakuri in almost every single Queen list, so you definitely want a searcher to help you go through some of these cards and be able to grab some extra advantage. Next, we got Charlotte Sparrow. I think that this is just a solid option as a beater, especially if you're playing a Big Mom Pirate focused deck. And yeah, it's just a 3 cost beater, and then on KO, it looks at the top 3 of your deck and adds a Big Mom Pirate card to your hand. So I think that this is a solid option for this deck as well. Next, we're going to be talking about Shirahoshi. I think this option's a little iffy for me. I think that it's good, but not knowing it's there can be bad. So in the Katakuri decks, they really like to play this card, and same in the Big Mom decks. They really like to play this card because they can know that it's in their life. In Queen, you're not going to know it's there, so you're not going to be able to save it for the end and then get to cycle your hand out. You're just randomly going to get this, and I guess that's going to be the same way with all of these other cards that have trigger. However, this one, it's really nice in Katakuri to be able to be prepared for that on that like last life hit, and then you get some extra advantage to help you get out of a bad situation. So I think Shirahoshi is a solid option. However, I don't think I'm going to be trying it out in any of my lists. If you all are trying it out, definitely let me know in the comments below. Next, we got Charlotte Katakuri, and I think that this is a instant staple for any Queen list. It is the 8 cost, so it gets your Queen effect off, and on play, it puts a character with a cost of 8 or less on the top or bottom of its owner's life area face up. This card is phenomenal against certain decks, and honestly, just in any matchup, because you get to use it to place either one of your cards or your opponent's cards in their life. And when you use this, say you're at 1 life and low amounts of card in hand, you use this and you stack something like a Boa Hancock that gives you another life card and an extra hit again next turn when you trigger this card. Then you can also use your Queen effect to gain a 2nd life that turn. This card is insanely powerful in the Queen deck and really good against certain decks like Rebecca. It's really, really good to stack all of their 7 cost Luffys in their life and then slowly deck them out just by gaining life continuously. And they really can't do anything about it once all their Luffys are gone. They're just going to deck out. So if you're looking to play Queen, definitely have your playset of Charlotte Katakuri on standby because I think it's an instant 4 of in any list. A new card that I want to talk about, which I think is an interesting card that you could see in a yellow deck, I guess, is the new Olin. This card is a Big Mom Pirate card, so it is searchable off of Pudding, but you don't really want to search this. You really want to get this card in Trigger, and it's a 7 cost 7k character. It says also treat this card as Charlotte Linlin according to the rules, and it has a trigger that says if you have 1 or less cards in your life area, you may play this card. So it's interesting. I could see it in a list. I'm pretty sure I have it in a list that we're going to look at here in just a minute, but I think that it's very risky. You know, if you don't get this card in Trigger and it's just in your hand, I think it's very rare that you're going to play this over something like Katakuri or Yamato or Mihawk. So it's an option. I don't think it's the best option. I think this card is a lot better in something like Katakuri or Big Mom where you can stack it or know that it's there. Next, we have a card that I think is also crazy strong for this deck is the, well, honestly, for any yellow deck, is the new Capone Beige 2K counter card. 3 cost, 3000 power, doesn't matter, you're not going to be playing it. You like it because it's a 2K counter and its trigger is insane. Its trigger says up to one of your opponent's leaders or characters cannot attack during this turn. This saved me so many times when playing on the sim. It's unbelievable, honestly. If you're wanting to play a yellow deck, make sure you have your playset of this card moving forward into OP04. Another one to talk about right there with Beige is the Sanji blocker. This card's phenomenal, and especially when paired with Pudding because you can search it. But this is another one of those cards that you really like to see in Trigger as well. It's a trigger blocker. You get to trash a card from your hand and play it. It's just insanely strong, and if you're wanting to play yellow this format or anytime moving forward, you're going to want to get a playset of this card. Next we have Pound. It's another blocker, 3 cost, 3000 power, 1000 counter, and on KO it places up to one of your opponent's cost 3 or lower characters on the top or bottom of your opponent's life face up. Now, I think that this card is decent. However, I tested it out and I wasn't a big fan of it. You know, I don't believe the effect is mandatory. It says place up to 1. So I'm pretty sure that means that you don't have to place 1, but I still would rather play cards like the Boa Hancock or the Charlotte Brûlée instead of this. The Charlotte Brûlée is searchable by Pudding, and it's also that 3 cost. It does have less power, but I think it's just better to run those because you can also get those in life and trigger them. This card is decent. I could see it played. If you're liking this card in your list, let me know and I'll have to give it another shot. Now here's the powerhouse of the Queen deck. I think that out of all the high cost characters that are good options for this deck, this is the one. Yamato is the one. Yamato is going to be the card that really carries this deck very hard because it lets you reach that Queen effect to gain a life, and on play it KOs up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost that is equal to or less than the total life on the field. So say you have 1 life, your opponent has 4, you can KO a 5 or less. Then if you have 1 or less life, you gain a life. So you can easily play this, pop a blocker, gain a life, then use Queen effect to gain another life in the same turn. And that is usually one of those devastating pushes in this deck that really helps close out the game. So if you're wanting to play Queen or a yellow deck this format, definitely get your hands on this as well. There's a lot of yellow cards that you want to get your hands on in the OP04 set. Here's an interesting one I found. It's the Promo Sanji. Now, I know that this is locked behind regional promos, and it might be a little pricier than some other cards, but I think it is something to talk about. It's 3 cost, 4000 power, Dawn times 1, your turn. While your life area has 2 or less life cards, this character gains 2000 power. So when you're at 2 or less life, the card becomes 7k off of just 1 Dawn, and it's a 3 cost. I think this card's pretty crazy. I think that it'd be crazier if it wasn't just restricted to your turn, like something like Charlotte Cracker. However, I think that it is still a solid option and something to maybe toy around with. I did throw in this card to talk about because we don't have this in the TCG yet, but the second that we do, you best believe that this card is going in almost every single yellow deck possible. It's a 4 cost, 5000, 1000 counter, Zoro card. It has a trigger to KO up to one of your opponent's cost 4 or lower characters. That is insane. I really think that this card is going to be a powerhouse for yellow decks moving forward once we do have access to this card, so I did just want to mention it while I had the chance. Another solid option is the Rush Katakuri, 4 cost, 6k power. On play, looks at a life card from the top of you or your opponent's life area and gets to move it to the top or bottom. Then if you have less life cards than your opponent, gains Rush. Very simple, very solid effect, and definitely playable in this deck. Next we have the Charlotte Snack. Now this card is kind of like Charlotte Smoothie, except it lacks the trigger to play it, and it is 1 cost higher, but it also has 1000 more power. Dawn times 1, when attacking, you can add the top or bottom card of your life area to your hand, and this character gains Banish and 1000 power in this battle. So it becomes 8k with Banish off of 1 Dawn. I think that's pretty strong and can help you get closer to that Queen effect sooner. You know, you're adding that card to your hand, so your life and hand total isn't really changing. However, that card can now be discarded for counter or used for something else. So I think that this does help you get closer to that Queen effect while also getting you a pretty strong body on the field. Another one is Charlotte Daifuku, and this has the same effect as the 2-cost Sanji we were talking about earlier, except it only takes 1 Dawn instead of 2 under it, and I think that it's just another solid option to help get you some advantage, especially if you're playing a yellow Big Mom strategy. Next, we have Charlotte Brule. This is your other trigger blocker for the Big Mom archetype, and I personally, like I said, I like to play this as well as the Boa Hancock and the Sanji, so that I'm maxing out on those blockers from life and really getting defensive with the strategy. I guess it's really up to you which one you want to play and what kind of build of this deck you're running, but I think that any of them are solid options. Next, we have the 7-cost Charlotte Linlin, and I think that this one's just okay. It doesn't get you to that Queen gain a life effect, but it is a big body that is searchable by pudding, and it can rip one of your opponent's life or get you another life. So I did want to throw it in here just to show you it is a solid option, and definitely worth trying out if you are playing a Big Mom style Queen deck. One that I think that is super interesting is the yellow Kaido from the Yamato structure deck. This paired with cards from the Animal Kingdom archetype and Who's Who is pretty strong in my opinion. It's searchable off of Who's Who, and it's 4 cost, 5,000 power, 1,000 counter, Dawn ×1. While you have 2 cards or less in your life area, this character can't be KO'd in battle. I think that that's pretty damn strong, to be honest. You know, you just get a body that is almost unremovable unless you bounce it or shuffle it away. So also being searchable, I think that it's a really solid option to try out. Next, we have Gum Gum Rain. I haven't tested this out, however I really want to, because it's a 0-cost counter, which I think is really good for this deck. I don't like playing counter events just because a lot of the times you won't be left with any Dawn on your opponent's turn in this deck. You're going to be playing these 9-cost and 8-cost characters, then using the rest on your Queen leader to gain that effect, so you don't have the Dawn to spend on a counter event. And I think that's where cards like Gum Gum Rain come into effect. You can trash one of your big guys that's bricking your hand up and get 3,000 power out of it. And the trigger to return a 2 or less to the hand isn't bad either. I think that this is a solid option if you're wanting some more defense in this deck. Next, we got 3,000 Worlds. Everybody knows and loves it. If you play blue, it's just main, place a character with the cost of 5 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck. You know, just some instant removal, and the trigger bounces a 3 or less to the bottom of the deck. So, solid option if you're trying to play more of an aggressive deck, and I could definitely see this in a couple different lists for sure. Next, we got Playgrounds. It says Plague Shot on here, however, the official translation was Playgrounds. So, this card pairs with what I was talking about earlier, the Ice Oni as well as Who's Who. It's searchable off of Who's Who, and you need it for the Ice Oni card. Well, I guess you need the Ice Oni card for this card. It says, main, you can trash an Ice Oni from your hand and place a character with the cost of 4 or lower on the bottom of the owner's deck. Then you play an Ice Oni from your trash. So this card plus Ice Oni is basically double removal. You get to bottom deck a 4 or less with Playgrounds, and then on the next turn when you attack with Ice Oni, you get to bottom deck a 5 or less. So like I said, it's kind of gimmicky. It does rely on you having both of these cards in your hand at the same time, but if you're playing this Animal Kingdom style deck where you have Who's Who to help search as well as Queen to help search, you're gonna be finding them, no problem. And I've tested it out a little bit. There is a couple times where you find one and not the other, but most of the time you will be able to find both of them, especially when you play Queen to look at 7 cards and grab up to 2 of either of them. So like I said, it's very interesting and very solid removal, 2 turns as well. So definitely something to check out and test out for yourself. Next, we got Gum Gum Red Rock. I believe that this is an instant staple in any blue deck moving forward. It gets rid of any card on the field for 6 Dawn. And its trigger places a cost of 4 or less at the bottom of the deck. So this card's just instantly going into every single blue deck in my opinion, and yeah, you're gonna use it in this deck because there is times where you cannot remove it with things like your Mihawk or your Soja King or even Kaido. Like, there's bodies that you cannot remove, and that's where Red Rock really comes in handy. Next, we got Thunderbolt, another solid option, gets a life out of there, and it also gets rid of a 5 cost or less. So I think it's interesting, especially if you pull it out of trigger, it just KOs a 5 or less. So solid option for sure to try out. I guess it really depends on if you want to play Thunderbolt or 3,000 Worlds, because they both get rid of a 5 or less, but I'm going to leave that up to you all, and we're going to move into the last card, which is Soul Pocus. Now, this card really is basically just the event version of the 7 cost Big Mom, You know, it has the same exact effect, but I like that it has trigger to activate that main effect. Basically, you just get to put your opponent on the choice right out of life, and I think that can be devastating. You're either going to get that hit that they just dealt back, or you're going to deal a hit to them instead. And not a great card, but I did want to mention it as a solid option to try out. Now that we've looked over all these cards that I wanted to talk about, I want to show you a couple different deck lists that I cooked up really fast. One of being the deck list that I've personally been testing on stream, and then two being some of these versions that we talked about. One is the Animal Kingdom, and one is the Big Mom Pirates. So let's get right into those. All right, y'all. So first, I really wanted to talk about the competitive Queen build that I've been testing out on stream, and this is it. I'm going to show it to you right here. If you've been interested after watching my trolling with Queen videos, this is the list we've been running. However, you wouldn't have been wondering if you were in my Discord, because I post all the deck lists that I test out on stream in the Discord. So that's one more reason for you to go ahead and join there. Once we hit 100 members, we're going to be doing a free box tournament on the sim over Discord. So make sure you're in there before we hit 100 so that you can get the chance to win a free box tournament. But yeah, this is the list I've been running. You know, we got the Queen leader. I'm playing 3 Mihawks. I don't like 4. I've tested 4. I think that it's just a little too bricky. I like 4 Yamato instead of 4 Mihawk. You do like that good removal from Mihawk, but that's why we also play 3 Red Rock. So I think 3 is a great option. I'm also running 4 of the Doflamingo, like I was talking about earlier. You could play it and stack something like Beige, Sanji, Brule, Hancock, or Red Rock to the top of your life using the Queen effect, and then trigger it on your opponent next turn. I've done that a couple times to win a few games while testing this list out. We also have the Kaya 2K counter. You know, like I said, this really is just a great 2K counter to help you cycle a couple cards from your hand. Also playing 4 of that Soja King, just good removal. Also cycling that hand. Got the 2K Sasaki, cycling that hand. You know, like I said, this deck really revolves around what you have in your hand at any given moment. So being able to have the tools that you need, like Katakuri and Yamato, is what's going to really make this build successful. I am playing the 1-cost Law blocker. Like I said, I love playing Katakuri, using Queen effect and dropping the Law. That really insulates you for another turn or two and is devastating at times. I think that having access to a 1-cost blocker is just really crazy for any deck. I am playing the Boa Hancock trigger blocker, as well as the Brule trigger blocker. Like I said, I want to play maxed out copies of these just to max out the chance that I get a trigger from life and insulate another turn worth of damage. We're running 4 Katakuri, 4 Beige. This card's insane against any deck, especially when you pull it out of life. If it's in your hand, it's just another 2K. We are also playing the Trigger Sanji, so we're playing a total of 12 trigger blockers, which it's just devastating. That's one reason why people hate playing against Queen, and it really has that power behind it, is because you can think that you're going to get them, and then randomly you hit 2 life off of them, and both of them were blockers, and the next turn they heal that same 2 life, and they still have the blockers on field. It's crazy. It's really insane, and I like maxing out all copies of these when I'm playing this deck. Next, like I said, this is the heart and soul of the deck, the Yamato, and you got to max out the copies of that. So you're going to see this in every list that I show off today, and there's a reason for it. Like I said, it's really a truly strong card. And then lastly, like I said, we are running the 3 Red Rock so that we have some great removal. It's really good against any deck playing the new Blue Kaido. It's really good against any deck playing any 10 drops, really. Anything above a 7 or an 8, that's what you use the Red Rock for. And even sometimes just lower things, like if you don't have these or access to these right then and you're at 6 Dawn, just use your Red Rock. Get rid of a blocker Luffy or a 7-cost Luffy, something like that, you know. All right, now let's go ahead and look at the next list. Now this is the next list. This is going to be the Animal Kingdom Pirates type list that I told you I built up real fast. This list is a little more gimmicky and might not be as strong as the first list. I don't think that either of these 2 lists I'm about to show you are as strong as the first list. That's why I wanted to lead with that one. You know, that's going to be more of the standard competitive type of build that you're going to be seeing for the Queen deck in this format. However, don't be surprised if you see someone pulling up with this kind of list right here. You know, it plays a lot of the same cards, but we have a small sub-engine in here as well. We're running 3 Soja King instead of 4, and then we're also running 2 of the King. Now, like I said, this is just to get you a draw, but it is also just a stronger body than Soja King, something that you can search off a Who's Who to play on your 7 Dawn turn. Next, we're running 3 of the 4-cost Queen Searcher. I don't like 4 of this card just because that feels clunky, and with Who's Who, you will be able to find all your Ice Onis. It's a nice beater to have on the field, and it gets you to your Ice Oni and your playgrounds really easily, so I do like 3 of it, and you're going to be able to see it off of your Who's Who frequently enough. Next, we're running 4 copies of that Ice Oni, and then we're running 4 Satsuki as well as 4 Who's Who, just to round out those Animal Kingdom pirate cards. We are running the Boa Hancock, and we are running the Brule. Just want those trigger blockers in there. I'm not playing Sanji in this list just because I want to keep that hand advantage up until late game when we are dropping these bigger bodies, and you're going to be able to defend yourself. You know, we're playing, I want to say, a total of 8 2Ks. Yeah, only 8 2Ks. So we're going to have to get some advantage other ways, and we don't want to be discarding cards for Sanji to be able to play him instead of holding those cards in hand for counter. Next, we're playing the 8-drop Katakuri as well as Beige and Yamato. You're going to see these in almost all of the lists that you see for any yellow deck moving forward. Maybe not 4 copies of these, but you're going to see Yamato and Katakuri in almost every yellow deck. We got the Brule, and then we're running 3 of that 4-cost Kaido like I was talking about earlier. It's searchable off of Who's Who, hard to get rid of when you're at low life, and I think that it's a solid option just to have as a beater. They're going to have to spend something like a Red Rock, a 3,000 Worlds, or some kind of bounce removal to get rid of this card, and it's just going to be a problem for your opponent, especially when it's searchable and they get rid of it and then you just drop another one on the field. Next, we're running 4 of that Playgrounds. Like I said, you want to max these out just so that you can see both of them in tandem and find them off of your Who's Who and Queen. And then we're also running 3 copies of that Red Rock. You know, you just got to have that in this deck for that extra removal. Like I said, this is going to be more of one of those fun lists to try out. I'm definitely going to take this to locals one day just to mess around with some people, but I'm going to be running that competitive build more often than this one. So let's go ahead and take a look at the last list. The last list is going to be a Big Mom Pirates build. Alright, y'all, I got this last list pulled up here, and like I said, it's a Big Mom Pirate build. We are playing a lot more of these Big Mom Pirate cards, and we're playing Pudding to kind of cycle through the deck instead of Who's Who. So we got 3 Mihawks. Like I said, I do want that extra removal in this version, and we are playing 3 Kayas. We're playing 4 Sanjis. Just some nice 2Ks there as well as Beige. So we're at 11 2Ks because we're only playing the 4 Brule. We're not playing the Boa in this list, but we are playing the Sanji. So we want some extra 2K counters here, and we also have 8 of our trigger blockers, but this is also searchable off of your Pudding, so it's really good to play this over the Boa in this list. I know Boa isn't searchable in either of the other lists, however, I do like Sanji in this list just because it is searchable. Next, we are playing Charlotte Cracker as well as 3 Smoothie. These are going to be your main beaters for the deck until you're able to drop your big fellas. And yeah, really devastating with Cracker when you get to lower life. You can just start pressuring your opponent with that double attack, either getting cards out of their life or getting cards out of their hand early game. And same with Smoothie. Smoothie just gets really big and takes one of your life cards to help you get closer to that Queen effect sooner. Yeah, Pudding to search almost the entire deck, as well as 4 of the 8-drop Katakuri. I am trying out 2 Olin. It is searchable, but our real goal with it is to get it in life and trigger it that way. Then next we are playing 4 Beige, 4 Sanji, 4 Yamato, and 4 Brule. Pretty standard if you're going to be playing the Big Mom Pirates cards. And then we are running 2 of the 7-cost Lin Lin. If you don't like Olin and it doesn't work out in your testing, I'd just bump up this, or maybe 1 more of this and 1 more Kaya, or maybe 1 more of this and 1 more Red Rock. But I do think it's a good option, just kind of help put more pressure on your opponent or more defense on yourself. Then we are running that 3 Red Rock standard in every list. I've tried 4. I don't like it, especially when you have Mihawk in the list as well. Just too much removal and not enough bodies. So I like 3. And then we are running 2 Thunderbolt because it is searchable removal, and that trigger out of life is also crazy. So I hope that looking over some of these new cards and some of the cards that you can play in Queen has really given you a good look and a deep dive, if you will, into this deck and what you could be playing if you're wanting to play this leader. If you're liking the Big Mom Pirate playstyle from OP3 and the Katakuri and Big Mom lists, try out this Big Mom Pirate list. If you're liking the new Animal Kingdom Pirates card, try out the new Animal Kingdom Pirates card in a list like I showed previously. And then if you're wanting to play something more competitive than both of these lists, in my opinion, try out the first list that I showed on the screen. Like I said, all those cards we went through at the beginning, I think are pretty decent options to try out in here as well. And then we also get some new, more powerful cards in the next set, like the ulti that searches any card off the top of your deck. So I'm really interested to see how this Queen deck evolves moving into OP05, but right now I'm really interested to see how I can do with this deck at locals and regionals. So I hope that this video has been educational for you all on the Queen leader and the possible cards that you can play in here. I'm going to be doing this deep dive series every once in a while, just looking at decks that I'm trying out and a couple options that I've been thinking about for that list, and really show off what the capabilities of this leader and color style is. If you're liking these kind of videos, definitely make sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Check out all my social media as well as my Twitch and my Discord in the description below. Make sure to check out Dueling Guard and use code GUMGUMTCG for a discount, and I will see you all on the next one. Peace.